What if you woke up tomorrow morning and you checked your portfolio and one of your assets was missing? It was gone. You didn't sell it. It was just gone. How does that happen? Can it happen? Yes, it can. Now, today we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Jack Ma. There's been a lot of speculation over the last few months about the whereabouts of Jack Ma. Jack Ma is the founder and CEO of Alibaba, which is the Chinese version of Amazon. This guy's got a very interesting story, a real rags to riches tale. And what makes it even more interesting is the fact that he did it in a country that really doesn't look too kindly on individualism, China. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you can actually lose an asset through no fault of your own and how to prevent that from occurring. All right, let's talk about it. I'm very excited about this. We've got our first Before we get started, hit the subscribe button. By subscribing, you help us further this message of financial literacy. Once you've hit subscribe, go into the comment section and just leave a comment letting us know that you did subscribe. Once you do that, we'll know that you've enlisted as a soldier in the war on economic illiteracy. Ma Yun, or Jack Ma as the world has come to know him, was academically unremarkable. He even tried to get a job with KFC when they came to China, and they said no. He taught English and shuffled around for a while until he found the internet. And the story that he tells is he was looking up beer on the internet. And as he did that, he came up with the idea of how to sell things on the internet. And that was pretty much the origin story for Alibaba. That will go on, that company will go on to make him the richest man in Asia and one of the richest men in the world. Now, if I told you that story here in America, it would be just like, okay, whatever. Yeah, par for the course. This kind of thing happens all the time, especially with these tech companies, these Silicon Valley companies. But Jack Ma was able to do this in autocratic China. And that's kind of led to his downfall. Jack Ma hasn't been heard from since October of 2020. Now, it's January 17th of 2021 as we tape this. And hopefully, Jack Ma will resurface, but he hasn't been seen in public, hasn't been seen on Twitter. And in that country, in the country of China, if you piss off the government, then you really have one hell of a problem on your hands. A lot of people here in the U.S. will decry certain things about the government, but in other countries, and quite a few other countries, if you go against the government, even in a slight way, you're risking your life, you're risking your future, and in some instances, you're risking the lives of your family. So, as all that has transpired, in the midst of it, China has said that they are considering going ahead and nationalizing Alibaba. Now, Alibaba is an American depository receipt traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We've talked about American depository receipts before. All it means is it's a way for a foreign company to trade their shares on an American exchange. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, there are many people in America who own shares of Alibaba, either directly or through an index fund or mutual fund. Now, the stock in the last 6 months has been down. And the reason for that is because Jack Ma has, pretty much gotten into some difficulties with the Chinese government. And let's be honest, it was Jack Ma's leadership that took that company from where it began to, where it ultimately ended up. And I don't have any faith in any government to run a company like that, a forward-thinking company like that. So basically, shareholders of Alibaba woke up one morning and the world had changed for them with respect to their ownership of that company. They don't know where the CEO is. Imagine if Elon Musk just disappeared. How confident would you be in Tesla? All right. So these investors don't know where the CEO is. They don't know whether or not China is going to decide to go ahead and nationalize the company. They have nationalized, they being the Venezuelan government, for example. They've nationalized companies down in Venezuela, oil companies to be specific. And so, for example, Exxon shareholders woke up one morning and part of their company had just been appropriated by the government of Venezuela. No compensation, no redress. It's ours now. And, you don't have to like it, but this is the way it is. So that's a real risk when you are investing in companies that are based and doing business primarily overseas. And that is why I always say you have to really do your due diligence, because if you don't, you could wind up waking up one morning and finding your assets have been stolen. Let me give you another example. Mohammed bin Salman, he is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Back in 2017, he had the richest men in Saudi Arabia arrested. The scuttlebutt is that he held them until they decided to cooperate, and what that cooperation looked like was signing over huge chunks of their fortunes to the Saudi government. And you might say, well, why would they do that? Well, word is they were being tortured, and people tend to want torture to stop. So if you can make it stop by writing a check for a few $1 billion, then that's exactly what you do. One of the more famous Saudi billionaires is Prince Alwaleed bin Talal. Now, this individual owns Kingdom Holding Company, and he also has ownership of a bunch of shares in companies like Twitter, Apple, 21st Century Fox, a lot of companies that he's a major share owner of. So imagine if this guy, something happens to him, or you hear he's being tortured, and the Saudi government is going to appropriate his shares of Apple. How many shares of Apple does he own? You start to ask yourself, what impact would this make if the Saudi government decided to take his shares and then sell them all? Or what if, because he just had to write a big check to the Saudi government, now he has to divest himself of various shares of various companies because, he still wants to be rich and maintain his lifestyle. So these are all the types of things that you really need to be cognizant of before you start to invest in a foreign company. What does the governmental situation look like? Is it one that respects private property? And if they have a history of not respecting private property, then you should probably stay away.